Hello and welcome back to Stop and Go F1 with this, the review of the Formula 3 for this weekend. Now, if you're coming to the channel thinking, where on earth is the Formula 1 qualifying reactions? Well, I was at a Coldplay gig last night and I didn't get in until 1:30 in the morning and I was very tired, so I didn't do it. So I'll do a quick recap at the start of the F1 race reactions. But right now, it's time for the Formula 3, starting with the sprint of yesterday. And I think this weekend, for Formula 3 and Formula 2, maybe a weekend when we go, oh wow, actually the sprints were better than the actual races. We had two very good sprints yesterday. Not that the F3 race this morning was boring in any way. So let's get into it though, because on the sprint it was O'Sullivan on pole with Luke Browning alongside. O'Sullivan got a good getaway, and it was actually quite a bad start for Luke Browning. You can see him bogged down, but I think when O'Sullivan crossed over to defend from him, he actually got a bit of the slipstream, and that actually covered him to make him keep P2. If O'Sullivan had just gone straight and hadn't fought him at all, I think Browning would have gone back a bit more, so he was actually quite lucky there. Cohen goes off just before turn 10, that's straight in the middle. That brings out a safety car. We then get a time penalty right away for Hugh Barter, instant with running with runoff instructions. So basically, into turn 1, I imagine we'll see this all throughout the weekend, even in the F1. In turn 1, if you go off turn 1, you've got to carry on going, and then there's a bollard just before you get back on. You've got to go around that to the left. Few guys didn't do that and received the penalties. Safety car ended on lap 4. Now, Gabriele Mini, he was making some good moves after starting P18. He actually did have a lap good enough to start P5 in the feature race, but that was due to track limit, so had a very low start for him. Overall, wasn't a great weekend for him, one to forget, but at this point in the feature race, he was up to P13. There were some really good battles for the lead trio, Sullivan and Browning, into lap 11. Mini, once again, it was actually a very good move for P11, forces Pepe Marti into a mistake and takes P11 on lap 12. Gregoire Saucy went wide into the final corner and lost 2 places on the straight, and then another one into turn 2. So he went from P4 to P7, all in a matter of like 3 or 4 corners on lap 14. Now, Montoya tried to move around the outside where they touched wheels, and Montoya went off. Now, he didn't go around the bollard, and he took the place off the track. That was on lap 15. But then Montoya had a puncture, as did Dino Boganovic on lap 16. Now, I can't actually remember if Montoya got the penalty. I think the FIA went, well, he's got a puncture. That might be a penalty enough. Well, I think that's what they said, basically. But yeah, when there was then a crash between Mansell and Gabriele Mini on lap 16. I think that was in turn 2. This brought out the safety car. We had a restart on lap 18. Mini was up to P8 by that point when he received a 10-second penalty for causing the collision. He went from P8 to P21 in the sprint race, but O'Sullivan was our winner from Luke Browning, then Fornaroli in the 3rd place. Sorry for my voice, that was the concert. Feature race now, and it was Pepe Marti on pole in his home race with Taylor Barnard alongside. Barnard went off into turn 1 and then used the correct runoff area. Then when he came back, was still wheel to wheel with Marti, and I thought he was going to get him, but he didn't. He didn't just on that occasion, and that was like the last time Taylor Barnard looked like he was actually going to do anything positive in the race this morning. Fornaroli and Browning go off. This brings out the safety car because Luke Browning had suspension damage parked on the side of the road. It took a while for the FIA to decide that it should be a safety car. I'm not really sure why, but there you go. Gabriele Mini gained 2 positions in 2 corners off the restart. He went up to P14. Not as good today in terms of gaining positions for Pepe Marti, but still equally as good if you like getting penalties. We'll get on to that in a bit. Yaney hit Villagomez. Villagomez was able to carry on. It was Yaney who had to stop on track with suspension damage. Colapinto easily takes P2 from Taylor Barnard on lap 12, and then Barnard loses another position down to P4. Gabriele Mini made a mistake into turn 1, and then when coming back onto the track, didn't go around the bollard. We get a 5-second time penalty with Tommy Smith for track limits, the first mention Tommy Smith for a while in these videos. We had an incredible move from Paul Aron around the outside of Taylor Barnard now to get P5. Barnard really struggled. I don't know if it was the tyres or just a lack of pace or whatever it was, but he lost, at this point, he has lost 5 places. He then went really wide into the final corner, loses another place. We get the 5-second penalty for Gabriele Mini for the track limits. Now, there's a lot going on here towards the end where Gerth makes a great move into the last corner. Then down the straight, it goes free wide over Sullivan and Gregoire Saucy. And then Saucy then had a puncture coming out of turn 1. It all went a little bit mental. O'Sullivan was then able to get past Barnard. Barnard losing another place before the end of the race. That was on lap 24. But it was the homeboy, not Gabriel, he did definitely not win. It was Pepe Marti who won. He gets my star of Formula 3 this weekend. Colapinto brought it home in second, and it was Bogdanovic in third. As I said, I enjoyed the sprint race more than I did the actual race. I wouldn't be surprised if it was the same with F2 because they had a very fun sprint race yesterday. There was lots to live up to today. So there you go. That is the Formula 3 for this weekend. Pepe Marti wins, and he also wins my star of F3 just because I think he really ran the race well. When you have a guy like that who's just in the lead, sometimes their race can be a bit underrated, but he built a good gap, he managed it well. In places where people like Barnard were just losing the tyres, it's the same with Mini, his tyres fell off towards the end, so he wasn't really making any overtakes, but Marti did really well here, looking really good. So there you go. That's all we got time for now. We'll be back in a little bit for F2, and then later on today for the F1, so make sure you're here for that. I'll see you then.